To order on September 28th, 2021 at 6:01. The first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the Sebastian River High School's Navy Junior ROTC under the direction of Lieutenant Commander James Landis, U.S. Navy retired, and Master Sergeant Michael Hussey, U.S. Marine Corps retired. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Colors. Ready. Cut. Post. Colors. March. Post. Colors. And salute. Ready, two. Come on. Place. March. Forward. March. Left. 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 Right. Left. Left. Colors. Oh. Order. Hold on.
It's always impressive. Next order of business is the adoption of the orders of the day. School board members, are there any items in consent that anyone would like to pull? Hearing none?
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am?
I'd like to pull the sustainability policy.
Except for public hearing, it's already been pulled. It's part of the action. It's on action.
Oh, I apologize. I read it wrong. Disregard.
Okay, so there's nothing pulled from consent to
Through the
actions?
chair, through the chair. Just a note, we did, based on workshop today, we were able to add the public hearing policies for the board to review, and that item has been placed on action 13B.
All right, so
Bless you.
we will add that to action. 13B. All right, may I have a motion to approve the orders of the day?
So move. Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries 4-0. Is Mrs. Berenberg on Teams?
Oh, we can see
She
her over
is,
there
yeah.
in the corner of the screen.
Oh, there she is.
Awkwardly close to Mr. Teskey's head.
All right. All right, the next order of business, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Moore for a series of presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are honored after 18 months to welcome back student performances. So it has been a very, very long time. We typically start our board meetings celebrating and acknowledging the skill that our students have, the abilities that our students have. What a great way to remind us of the purpose and the power of this work. So I am excited to welcome back Fellsmere Elementary School. We're getting ready to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, and they will have a presentation for us. And I will turn it over to our Public Information Officer, Ms. Maddox, to introduce our students. I did have the opportunity to meet with them backstage. They said they're not nervous. They know they're going to be on TV, and they're ready to show off for us. So this is going to be exciting.
Yes, they're very excited with their ukuleles back there. I told them to save it for the performance. We have the Fellsmere Music Club, and it's under the direction of our new Fellsmere music teacher, Charisse Courtney. And they are here this month until the 15th of next month is Hispanic Heritage Month. And at Fellsmere, they typically have a big celebration. I believe it's on October 1st. They're doing it this year. And we just asked them to bring a little bit of that to us here at the board meeting. So come on out, guys.
Okay, but I didn't get the actual policy.
After just a few practice sessions as a group, we are honored to share some songs celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. The first song we are performing is a song that originated in Mexico during the Mexican Revolution. Although it is often humorous, it can also symbolize a metaphor for helplessness, which many people felt during this time, the time the song was written. Here is our version of La Cucaracha. La cucaracha. would now like to share our version of La Bamba.
said, great job.
You're right, you were not nervous, man.
Let's give them one more round of applause as they leave. That was a wonderful performance. And especially to be able to pull that together so early in the school year, that is amazing. So, next we have one of our school choice video highlights. The agenda says Dad's Day. It is not a video about Dad's Day, but it is about Pelican Island, one of our choice schools. And we are asking for everyone to join us at the SDIRC Choice and Community Extravaganza, which is October 9th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the IG Center. It's being advertised right now all over social media and on our website, so please check it out. There will be shuttle services from Fellsmere, Gifford Youth Achievement Center, Sebastian River High School. Come learn about our community partnerships and meet our community partners. There'll be different breakout sessions, hands-on experiences, and you can learn all about our school's different choice programs. And not to forget our SDIRC Ready, Set, Go Family Fun Day that will be taking place at the extravaganza as well. So, Brooks.
Welcome to Pelican Island Elementary, a school of environmental science. I'm Principal Felice Bagley, and I'm so excited to show you what makes our school so special. At Pelican Island Elementary, we believe that Earth Day is every day, and we set up our learning environment in a way that expands beyond the pages of a textbook, beyond the four corners of a classroom, and beyond the outskirts of the protected, nature preserve, and certified wildlife habitat on which our school is set. Our Pelicans learn through an engaging, solution-oriented approach so that by the time our kindergartners leave 5th grade, they've been exposed to gardening, composting, life cycles, recycling, sustainability, and conservation in a way that not only makes them experts, but true advocates for environmental science, impacting our school, our local community, and our world.
Hi there, I'm Jeremy Keene, the Assistant Principal here at Pelican Island Elementary. This truly is a special place, and I'm extremely proud to be part of the flock. I can say with 100% certainty that our faculty and staff love what they do. So much, in fact, that I use school choice to bring my own daughter here to be part of the Pelican family. Through the lens of environmental science, we integrate hands-on, project-based learning, providing a K-5 vertical approach with the idea that each grade level can build on the learning from the prior year. Last year, we focused on becoming a STEAM designated school here in the district, and we achieved silver designation, and we are excited to continue this work. Schools today, as they should, have a major focus on technology and the integration of electronics, and we do too. But we try and infuse some vitamin N by getting our students outside and in nature as they learn across all curriculum.
Thank you for taking the time to explore our school and all the unique learning opportunities our school has to offer. We hope your child joins the Pelican Island family, where we inspire our Pelicans to soar to success.
Now that is just one of several of our schools that we love to brag about, and those videos are available for all of our schools online, as well as our school choice booklets that you can go through and look at all the different highlights for the programs at each school. So visit our website, indianriverschools.org, and you can find that information there. For our next presentation, I would like to ask Ms. Dampierre to please come up. She's the Assistant Superintendent of Strategic Planning and Support Services, and we have a special proclamation, an ESE update.
Good evening. Our ESE department is so pleased to present a couple of awards tonight and to highlight some of the exciting work that was done last year with a collaboration with our parents, as well as the work that we have planned for the upcoming school year. I'm going to ask Mrs. Rachel Morey, the Director of ESE Services, to come on up. And she is going to present the proclamation and then provide recognition for our visitors.
Thank you. Yes, we are very excited to be here tonight. Thank you for having us. September is actually Deaf Awareness Month, and so we thought it was appropriate to highlight one of the services that we provide in the ESE department, which is supporting our students who are deaf or hard of hearing. So with us tonight, we have Mr. Leo Volbracht, who is our teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, and he's going to introduce our presenters for tonight's proclamation.
Thank you. We are excited to be able to represent the Deaf and Hard of Hearing project and program here in Indian River County, and we have two students with us representing two different schools. One is Sophie. She is representing not only our Deaf and Hard of Hearing students, but Citrus Elementary School. Sophie wears a cochlear implant and a hearing aid in order to access language. And we have Gage as well. He is representing Rosewood Magnet School, and he wears bilateral hearing aids, and they will help me to present the proclamation tonight.
Proclamation designating the first 2 weeks of October 2021 as Disability History and Awareness Weeks, and encouraging our schools and universities to provide instruction on disability history, people with disabilities, and the disability rights movement. Whereas there are approximately 375,000 students with disabilities in Florida's K-12 education system, and whereas the Americans with Disabilities Act is founded on 4 principles: inclusion, full participation, economic self-sufficiency, and equality of opportunity for all people with disabilities, and
whereas a key method of permitting these 4 principles is for our schools to recognize the contributions by people with disabilities and our society, and provide instruction in disability history, people with disabilities, and the disability right movement through school curriculum, school assemblies, and over school activities. And it is desirable that state post-secondary instruction promote the activities that provide education, awareness, and understanding regarding people with disabilities. And whereas the legislator also encourages cooperation between the school system, post-secondary instructions, and community at large to promote better treatment and fair hiring practices for people with disabilities. Now therefore be resolved by the school board of Indian River County that the board urges our schools to provide intensive instructions on disability history, people with disabilities, and disability rights movement, especially during the first 2 weeks of October and periodically through the school year, and encourages our institutions to conduct and promote educational activities on those subjects.
be it further resolved that the first 2 weeks in October of every year be recognized as Disability History and Awareness Weeks in Indian River County, Florida. adopted by the District School Board of Indian River County, Florida, on this 12th day of October, 2021.
Thank you.
All right. We would like to recognize the student and adult presenters for today. If you would be willing to come up, we have some certificates for you as well. Again, we have Mr. Leo Volbracht, our teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing. We have Gage Kepley. Sophie Custer. And our educational sign language interpreters, Jessica Coyne and Kim Rifton.
All right, before we continue on, we want to make that well-read proclamation official. So may I have a motion from the board to approve the proclamation as read?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. Rosario, a second. Dr. Schiff is second. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm sure Mrs. Berenborg, who we've lost on the screen, would also vote aye. Motion passes unanimously. Great job. Back to you,
Ms. Moore.
All right, thank you so much for having us. So that special presentation was to help us kick off Disability History and Awareness Weeks, which begin next week, and they're the first 2 weeks of October. So we'll be sharing a little bit more about that in just a minute, in addition to some updates that are happening in our ESE department overall. So before we jump into highlights from last year and this year, I definitely want to start by recognizing the incredible staff that makes up the ESE department. It has been a little under 3 months that I've been on this job, and it is truly that team that's standing in the back of the room that helps us elevate ESE in Indian River County schools. So we have, yes, definitely a round of applause. We are very fortunate to have program specialists whose roles have changed a bit this year, and I'll be telling you a little more about that in just a minute. But not only are they supporting ESE programs throughout Indian River County, they're also supporting schools. So each of our program specialists have assigned schools where they are the ESE contact for parents, teachers, staff, students, families, so they have a go-to person to make sure students' needs are being met. So we'll go down the line. First, we'll start with Kat Wolf, our program specialist, who is supporting our therapy staffs, our virtual programming, our charter schools. She oversees our compliance. She keeps all of us kind of on the right track and moving forward with ESE. If you want to wave, Kat. We also have Ainsley Seeley, program specialist, supporting a large number of schools in the district and bringing a wealth of experience to our team, including not only leadership expertise, but writing quality IEPs and supporting our resource specialists so that we can truly elevate Indian River County schools. Okay. We also have Tom Stull, program specialist, who, in addition to supporting schools, is really focusing on providing strong separate class settings for our students with more intense needs and making sure that collaborative efforts take place between the teachers and students in separate class settings and the school team as a whole, so that inclusive opportunities take place for students. We have Laura McGill, also program specialist, supporting a handful of schools, along with our behavior analyst and behavior technician team, really supporting the work for students who have some behavioral struggles in the classroom setting. And she's really also working on our risk ratios and ensuring that all students are getting the best possible education in our county. All right, next we have Jessica Rojas, program specialist. A big project of hers is students with emotional and behavioral disabilities, and she's also a big proponent of expanding our continuum of services in Indian River County, which we've been working diligently on so far and are continuing on that work moving forward. And Dr. Daphne Matthews, program specialist, who has taken on our high schools. She is supporting our secondary high schools this year and really working to help school-based teams collaborate and elevate ESE at the high school level and really build that collaborative effort between administration, teachers, students, parents, the community, and working on our transition programming so that students have what they need in school and beyond. And although it is definitely a strong team in the ESE office, it would not happen without the work of our parents. So I did want to take a couple minutes to talk through some of the highlights that took place with the Parent Advisory Council last year before I jump into some of the work that has happened this year. So last year, our Parent Advisory Council tackled some big projects, and we have quite a bit of evidence to support the positive outcomes of their work. So in October 2020, the ESE department supported plans to recognize Disability History and Awareness Weeks for the first time in Indian River schools. So we're getting ready to do that again next week, and we're excited to continue that work that started last year for our schools. They also work to improve consistency with IEP meeting facilitation across the district. So the ESE department partnered with parents, some who are here tonight, to really help elevate the IEP meeting process, the facilitation of it, and the ability for everyone involved to advocate for students. In November, that team met with the ESE department to establish clear procedures for IEPs that could be held consistently district-wide. We have a few flowcharts, videos, things like that on our website if you haven't seen it, that all of our resource specialists and teams are using to ensure consistency across the district. And then during last January's Superintendent's Parent Advisory Council meeting, they debuted the enhanced IEP process flowcharts, which are on our website, in our resource specialist office, and utilized at all of our IEP meetings, which have really helped improve and elevate ESE and ensure consistency across schools. So in honor of that effort, we have 5 parents who really helped spearhead not only that work, but additional layers and layers of work that has been taking place and continue to, and we wanted to recognize them tonight. So if I could please have the program specialists come up to assist with this next part. We have a few parents that we want to recognize. First, we'd like to recognize Stacy Klim. We'd also like to recognize Trisha Cartwright. In addition to Dory Shimo. Barbara Hires. And Katrina McMahon.
Oh, wow.
This would be a big group picture.
We're taking a picture. Get all in line, yeah. And if I could, Mr. Chair, just want to acknowledge the hard work of the teachers and the parents that were selected to be highlighted. Upon my arrival, I said many times, one of the biggest concerns shared with me, or most consistently shared with me, was the status of our exceptional student education program. And parents not only advocating for the opportunity to improve the quality of support and services being provided, but literally really willing to roll up their sleeves and work shoulder to shoulder with that district team who stands in the back to create new ways of work. Not just talking about it, engaging, advocating, and then getting to work. And that's the power of, and when a community comes together to tackle hard, challenging obstacles. And I commit to you, you have done outstanding work, but at the same time, we're just scratching the surface. There's work still to be done. So as much as I highlight the work that this parent team has done and highlight the work of every one of you who stand that back row, who are a true champion for children, willing to advocate and make sure no student stands in the shadow of any other student. So thank you so much for what you do. Parents, continue to advocate, continue to support other parents, continue to ensure each and every single child has what they need. And I've said it to a few of you, the knowledge base that you have, not all parents have. And if I could replicate you and get you to advocate for those children and those parents who don't have that knowledge base, we're making this place just a so much greater community. So thank you for all that you do. You are the heart and soul of what Indian River County is to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
But our new director is not done. So
Thank you very much. With that in mind, yes, incredible work happened last year, and the work does not stop. Our mission and the combined effort of our department this year, our goal is to elevate ESE. You'll see it on our walls, you'll see it in our work, you'll see it on our Twitter. It's everywhere because that is our mission. Incredible work happened last year. We were able to lift that department, and we are going to continue rising and lifting for our students, for our staff, for our programs, so that we really can provide the best possible education for students. So far, not even a whole quarter into the year, I wanted to showcase some of the highlights that have taken place already, and then talk a little bit about the work that's going to happen from here. So we've already been able to expand a continuum of services at Gifford Middle School. We are thrilled to share that Gifford now has the broadest continuum of services of any school in Indian River County, which is very exciting and something we're hoping to continue to expand across the entire district. We also provided a facilitated IEP training for all resource specialists to build on the work that took place last year. And we were very excited to offer a training for administrators, resource specialists, and IEP teams on the IEP meeting process, leadership, and legal compliance, so that everyone is in alignment and really elevating our work for our students with disabilities. By that same token, gifted programming is also part of the ESE department, and so this summer we were able to expand our gifted allocations and offerings in our elementary schools. So again, we're able to elevate that work and support all of our students that fall under the Exceptional Student Education Department. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, we adjusted program specialist roles so they are on-site supporting schools. If you do follow us on Twitter, you'll see that I provide a monthly update or summary capturing what we're doing on campuses to help build and elevate ESE. So it's on-site visits, working with teachers, with staff, with administration, participating in meetings, supporting students, whatever it takes to help our department move forward. We're also very excited to be moving forward with Peers as Partners in Learning, which we're already working with secondary schools to implement a mentoring program for our students with disabilities at middle and high school. So that's already in the works and preparing for the following school year, which is very exciting. And finally, a big upcoming event, as Ms. Maddox mentioned earlier, we are pumped to be part of the School Choice Fair this year. When I met with parents over the summer, one thing that kept coming up was we want more inclusionary opportunities. We want to be included. We want to be included. And so being able to combine Ready, Set, Go in Choice Fair and be included in that event is a real win for our department and something that we are very much looking forward to on October 9th. So we also have the Parent Advisory Council meeting that is continuing this year. We had our first meeting just a couple weeks ago, and that work involved building and expanding our district website, which will be debuted at our next Parent Advisory Council meeting, which is next week. We're also continuing to grow our programs, our transitioning programs, inclusionary opportunities, WBLE, Peers as Partners in Learning, and like I said, expanding the continuum of services throughout Indian River County. And that work is work that was started by that team in the back and those parents that we recognized last year and will continue this year. All of the work that we're focusing on through that Parent Advisory Council is through the advisory of our parents. You know, we want to hear from our parents of students with disabilities, our parents of students who are identified as gifted, so that we can ensure that what we are offering is meeting their needs. And one of our last points, as I mentioned, we're starting Disability History and Awareness Weeks the next 2 weeks, the first 2 weeks of October. On campuses, you'll see announcements, quotes, activities for students to participate in. We'll also be sharing them on our Twitter. And then we are participating in the School Choice Fair for our Ready, Set, Go Family Fun Day. And we hope you will check us out. We have some very exciting presentations planned. We will have a sign language interpretation presentation and performance, so we'll be able to teach you a little bit of sign language, which is going to be awesome. Our gifted team is doing a robotics demonstration, and we're also going to be providing an ESE roundtable with frequently asked questions that parents ask, and maybe parents sometimes don't even know to ask, so that they can come and hear what they need and see the group that they can go to when they do have questions in the school setting. The last piece of our Disability History and Awareness Weeks is our virtual 5K, which is taking place throughout the week's window of Disability History and Awareness. We would love to have you join us. There's a QR code up there. It's on Twitter. It's on the district Facebook page. It's on our website. Tom Stoll has registration forms if you'd like to sign up today. We would love to have you join us at that special event. And finally, our next Superintendent's Parent Advisory Council meeting is next week. It will be on Teams. Please join us. Really, your feedback is what guides our work. So share what's going well, what could be going better, and that will help us take charge and move forward so we really do elevate ESE in Indian River County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moray. Board members, that's what happens when you hire great people and empower them and get out of their way. So Ms. Moray is on it, and want to acknowledge her. With that, I turn it back over to the chair. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, that was inspiring, and it's great to see the kids up here performing, and it's great. The next part of the program or the meeting is citizen input, and I will read the guidelines for citizen input according to School Board Policy 0169.1. Each statement made by a member of the public shall be limited to 3 minutes duration. Persons will be recognized in the order in which the requests were received. The time shall start when the speaker is at the podium, and the school board attorney will be the official timekeeper. You will hear a beep at the end of your 3 minutes. Persons may speak for up to 3 minutes at the beginning of a business meeting during citizen input as indicated on the order of business, and for up to 3 minutes to each action agenda item during the action agenda and each board member discussion item. As indicated on the order of business, persons may only speak once about any given item. The time period may be extended by the presiding officer. Only the individual submitting a speaker's form is allowed to address the board. Time may not be yielded to other speakers. During the meeting, please refrain from clapping or outbursts of any sort so that we can proceed with dignity and with decorum by not infringing on any individual's First Amendment rights. I need to remind everyone to direct all comments to the chair, not to individual board members or the superintendent. Board members may or may not address any input statements at the end of all citizen input comments. As board members listen to citizens without interruptions, citizens are asked to give board members the same respect. As per Florida Statute 1001.372, the presiding officer of any school district board may order the removal from a public meeting held by the district school board of any person interfering with the expeditious and orderly process of such meeting, provided such officer first issued a warning that continued interference with the orderly processes of the meeting will result in removal. This evening, we have 6 speakers. I will read the next speaker and the person that is on deck. The first speaker this evening is Michael Marsh. Oh, I just can't even follow my own directions. Paul Westcott is on deck.
Thank you. I'm here tonight to make something very clear. I got very tough skin when you come after me. But when my daughter's pictures are sent over to school district and school board members, and we won't point them out because I'm all about policy, Mr. Chairman, but when my daughter's pictures make their way to the school district, and I'm waiting for this public records request to come back to figure out if they were passed to anybody else, that's disgusting. And if we want to play that game, I'll play that game. We'll do public records every 2 or 3 hours. But it's sad that we have to do that. These meetings should not be a circus show. And that's what they've been for the last X amount of months. So I'm sick of it. So I'm asking for tonight that it stops. If you want me to stop, you better stop. Because it's one thing to come after me. But when you come after those 2 beautiful little interracial queens that I have, you think I'm crazy. You'll see crazy. Now, let's go back to a positive note because we're tired of masks, right? Let's talk about some other things that we can work on together. Can anyone tell me how many homeless children there are in Indian River County? That are school children? Do we know that?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad we do, because I do. Hundreds of them, right? So let's stop the masks, the critical race theory, all the nonsense, because we've explored every avenue. Every avenue. You can't have any more conversations about masks. Please. We're stronger together, right? Let's go to real issues that we have here. Like when my daughter goes past a shelter and says, "Daddy, my friend's in there." I've been in those shelters, okay? So those people who want to come after my so-called charity, which a lot of board members supported that team's success, haven't they? Yeah, they sure have. But you know what we do? We actually are out there in the trenches, and that's a real problem that we have. So if we really want to work together, I'll work with anybody. I just spent a week ago on the other side, but it shouldn't be me versus them. I'm a one-man team. Took some donations in from an organization that you would think I wouldn't be bothering with. But that's the difference about me, okay? Whether it's Democrat, Republican, I don't get put in a box, okay? I like to color outside the lines. I'm a very different person, very unique, you know? So if we really want to work together, got a lot of great events here at Team Success. Hope to see all the school board members. And let me say this, there should be no political pandering, okay? Re-elections are not important. These kids are. And when you start aligning yourself, no matter what the organization, we don't have to call anybody out. But it's disgusting and it should stop because we're all nonpartisan. That's how we ran, right? And matter of fact, in closing, can we go back to the districts that we were in when we were campaigning? Beautiful places, you know, Gifford. Pretty sure there's a few different ways you can get to Gifford. I know many of you have been there. Some haven't been there since they were campaigning. Hope to see them soon as they run again. So, in conclusion, stronger together. What are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? It's been a circus show, right? Last time I was here. And I'm so glad we have all this safety and security. But do we really need it? How much is that costing us, the taxpayer? I love our fine sheriff's office, too. Shouts out to Sheriff Flowers. It's a shame he doesn't come. I can't blame him. Because look what these meetings have turned into. Have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Next speaker is Paul Westcott. On deck, Jennifer Freeland.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for your service. I have letters here for each of you, and I'm hoping I'm not borrowing troubles for you all. This is not an issue that's in front of you, but it's on the way, and that has to do with the vaccine mandate that's going to be coming from the Biden administration. You're going to be asked to force families, heads of households, to choose between work and their personal health decisions. These are friends, family, your constituents. So this is a pretty important topic for you. This isn't an anti-vax message by any means. This is a message about personal self-determination and choice and liberty. And you know, there are those out there that anybody who speaks these sorts of things in relationship to the vaccine characterizes the conversation of being a flat earther conversation. It's not that. What I want to do is make you all aware of some issues that are important on this topic that you may not hear that you need to be looking into. First, Florida's Constitution has language in it that creates a standalone right to privacy. And you'll see in the letter reference to a case that specifically connects that to healthcare decisions, okay? Therefore, me as a citizen, your employees have a constitutional right by our state constitution to be free in that regard. Likewise, there is a statute that was adopted last legislative session, 381-00316, that's been interpreted to prohibit units of local government from mandating vaccinations. It's subject to interpretation. I would observe for you that those two legal principles alone potentially give your employees the right to sue under wrongful termination. An unlawful discharge, that is a discharge that is prohibited by Constitution and state law, could very well be a basis for a wrongful discharge. So when you're thinking about a $14,000 per person check that you write to the federal government versus firing people, it's a little more expensive than it may appear. Additionally, you need to consider the workers' compensation implications. Any adverse reaction to that is going to be covered. If you mandate it, you cover it. Your risk assessment hasn't included that in terms of your overall risk analysis and how you're reserving on the comp issue for you. That's important. You're going to be under-reserved because these things aren't going to show up right away. And then finally, those with pre-existing conditions are protected under the ADA. There's going to be some collision between your obligation to provide reasonable accommodations and what your job descriptions are in terms of the essential functions of the job. So when this issue comes to you, I just want you to be prepared. And that's what this is about, and that's what the letter is about. Thank you again. I appreciate your work.
Thank you, Mr. Westcott. Next up, Jennifer Freeland. On deck, Cody Holcomb.
Good evening, Dr. Moore and the board. I'm not allowed to go off script, so just teeny little forgiveness. I want to thank you for the moment of silence for the 3 teachers we lost. It's important that we remember teachers are being lost on a regular basis, unfortunately. I also came because I wanted to thank you for showing teachers of SDIRC that they are all important, that you saw them, that you honor the work they did and do. I want to thank you for making the $1,000 COVID bonus available to all of the teachers that the governor forgot. I am again proud of my district for making a deep cutting wrong right. I can't say thank you enough for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freeland. Next speaker, Cody Holcomb. On deck, Jennifer Pippin.
Good evening. So this would be my 3rd time speaking here with you guys. I keep telling you guys that politics should play, keyword should, no role in our children's education system, yet it continues to do so. I keep looking back at Ronald Reagan's quote that sticks in my mind about this whole last 18 months and this whole debacle we've been in. And it goes like this. The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government. I'm here to help. His other quote, I try to live my life by lately, raising a 5-year-old son. Freedom is never more than 1 generation away from extinction. We did not pass that on to our children in our bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. So that leads me to my conclusion. Here we are, another saying for you. Hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times. Good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. I feel we are living among weak men and women and have created ourselves a nation of hard times. I think we did this by playing politics instead of educating our children to become free-thinking individuals. I think playing all these politics is going to weigh heavily on everyone's minds once this whole cloud passes, if it ever does. Seems to me when you turn the news on, there's always the next one coming. I think we all, as educators, staff, parents, officials, school board officials, I think we all need to circle back and think a little bit about what is in our best interest, what's in our children's best interest. Let's focus a little more on educating the children and a little less on what happens in Washington, D.C. You want to play politics? Go to D.C., go be political. If you want to teach our children right from wrong, don't break the law. If you want to teach our children how to be free-thinking individuals who will one day run businesses and hold positions such as y'all hold, teach them by example. Thank you.
Next speaker is Jennifer Pippin. On deck, John Karapi.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Pippin. I'm one of the co-founders for We the People of Indian River County and the chairman for Moms for Liberty, Indian River, Florida. When is the division of the school board and parents going to stop? When will Mr. Barefoot and Dr. Moore stop running to the news to slander parents who are advocating for their children? We've been emailing, calling, and showing up for 14 months about the COVID-19 protocols, and until recently, you didn't follow the laws, executive orders, and emergency rules as elected officials. That statement doesn't include you, Ms. Rosario and Mrs. Barenborg. You guys received non-compliance letters on 8/27 and 9/23. They're up for public records. Yes, we are the same parents fighting for optional masking since day one. Yes, we are the same parents fighting for optional, healthy, asymptomatic quarantines. Mr. Barefoot, you preach about wanting to focus on education, yet if children aren't in school because of healthy quarantines, they aren't learning. If teachers and the district are spending all of their time on charts, graphs, phone calls home every day telling about COVID protocols, education is put aside. Please stop fighting parents and community members on advocating for our children. Dr. Moore, if you think we are here for an attack on public education, you are wrong. It's an attack on the people who are destroying public education. And we will continue to hold every single one of you accountable. What you fail to realize is that you guys are public servants and serve us, we the people, and our children, not the other way around. Please stop the division. Respect is earned, it's not just given. If you decide to censor the audio or videos of us in public meetings, what are you trying to hide? We can have someone every meeting record all their public speakers due to the laws in this state. Please stop trying to silence the parents in this community. Finally, I would like to have a policy written that vaccines for children and the district staff will be optional. I don't trust most of you up there, nor does most of the community. You want to focus on education? Then stop trying to take away our freedoms and our rights for medical choice for our children and anyone employed by the district. When there is risk, there should be choice. Again, we aren't anti-mask or anti-vaccine, we are anti-mandate. Please stop making a plan to make a plan for the COVID-19 protocols and the tiered mitigation strategies and keep everything optional. And follow the laws, executive orders, and emergency rules so we don't have to waste any more time on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pippin. Last speaker, John Karapi.
So the last one. There's no more after this? Wow. All right. So I just want to play a video. I come here, I speak about, mental health of the children, and, I talked about COVID stress disorder and things of that nature. And, and I listened to the to the workshop today, and and hearing about the things about let's get back to teaching and learning and doing all that stuff, and masks are almost behind us now, Dr. Moore. I want to play a video of a conversation I had, and I want to have you take a listen of what this gentleman has to say.
I can tell you unequivocally, it's been a complete, total disaster. I had a child last week who came into my practice about 8 years old with his mother. They were both wearing masks. I told the mother and the child, it's okay. You can take the masks off. It's safe. The mother, to her credit, did. The boy left it on. I asked him, why aren't you taking your mask off? He looked up at me and he said, Doctor, there's Delta variants everywhere. If I take my mask off, I might die. Wow. And then he paused and he looked at his mother and he turned back to me and he said, and I might kill my mother. Wow. Wow. That encapsulates how the children are feeling and how the children, more importantly, have been psychologically harmed, shamed, and turned into, just like critical race theory does, 50% victim and 50% oppressor. Yeah.
So that's the stuff that that you want to focus on, is that these children, the future, the mask isn't behind us. The future and the damage that's been done to these children is irreversible. So we need to get back to teaching and learning and stop having these kids feeling like they're losing their minds. They're not able to function. So teaching and learning is something we want to get back to, but also I want to also talk about the workshop, and you're wanting to change the protocols of these meetings. Well, I would suggest you change the protocols in the workshops, because the workshops are very entertaining to watch. I mean, I watched what you guys did to Jackie today. Jackie is the lone wolf in this building right now. Nobody wants to back her up. Everybody's after her. Everybody wants to. Every time she brings something up, right, turns her back and doesn't look at her. So Jackie, I want to apologize for what you endured today from this community and what you're dealing with. And I want to play one more video. Since I'm the last one, I can have a little extra time, I guess, right?
Nope.
No? Oh, no? Yeah, okay. Okay.
I'd like you to show me where I cursed.
In the workshop, you said BS. You can play back.
Well, and I think I said quote unquote.
No, you actually said the entire word.
What word did I use in the business meeting?
Gosh, right now, it was at the beginning.
Yeah, well, before you make an accusation like that,
Okay,
why don't you
Crappie,
get your facts
time's up.
straight?
Thank you
Mr.
very much.
Mr. Barefoot, if you ever talk to anybody like that in this room again, like that is unacceptable. You have no right to talk to Jackie Rosario like that. You understand? Seriously, you don't. You talk to your daughters like that? That's disrespectful.
You're done, Mr.
I know,
Crappie.
I'm not done. You're disrespectful. You need to apologize to her in public.
All right.
I do have a comment.
Dr. Moore?
Just some follow-up comments, Mr. Chair. We do have 196 students who are currently registered as homeless. When you compare that to all of last year, this is a running total, so we start the total at the beginning of the school year, and we're up to 196 as we begin to sunset just the first 9 weeks of the school year. All of last year, there were 450. So this is information that Mr. Hart has kind of championed as well. Doc Jones has asked for a presentation regarding the work that we are doing as a district to come to workshop to inform the district. But there is a issue of homelessness going on here in our county, and we are looking forward to providing that information to the board. Do want to acknowledge Ms. Freeland in the union. It was easy to do when you have a chief financial officer such as Mr. Fagan, who prioritizes the people of the organization first, and to ensure those who stand in the front line are honored for their work. Easy decision to make. And in addition to those counselors and media specialists and other members of your bargaining unit who were left off, we're also included the assistant principals, because they also were left out of that equation. So we're also acknowledging them with that $1,000. So thank you for that. As it relates to quarantines, quarantines now, when a student is in close contact with an individual who's identified as being positive, That is a phone call to the parent. The parent is informed, and the parent has the decision to make. I will continue to monitor my son or daughter for symptoms and send them to school, or I will quarantine for the appropriate number of days. So that is a decision made by parents. Everyone knows, well, maybe not everyone, but earlier last week, there was a change in the rule, which was we were leaning on for what we were doing as it related to our mask policy. That was modified. Therefore, that modification put us in a place where we were not comfortable, or I was not comfortable with the implementation. Therefore, we aligned ourselves to that new board rule. We are in compliance. Masks are optional throughout each of the specific tiers that we have in place. We may have recommendations, but it is at the sole discretion of the parents. So those are the updates based on information that was shared. Thank you.
Dr. Jones?
I was just going to talk with, I've been talking to Dr. Moore about, a presentation on homeless, and it really hit home when I talked to Mr. Hart after the rent subsidies ended and how many more were homeless. And obviously our principals are aware and teachers are aware, and we just want to make sure that we, do what's right for these students. And again, thank you to Dr. Moore and Mr. Fagan for leading us for that $1,000 for the other people that were not included by the governor. And I know the board felt strongly about doing the right thing. So thank you, Ms. Freeland.
Mrs. Rosario?
Thank you. Dr. Moore, I have a question about the new COVID protocols that have been changed. With regard to the quarantining, and since that is now a sole parental opt-out, what is the position or the place, I suppose, of the Department of Health within this new quarantine model? Before, it wasn't us who were quarantining, it was the Department of Health who were quarantining the students. Now that parents are quarantining, have they taken a step back? Have you had a conversation with our local Department of Health?
Through the chair, the process remains ultimately the same. The modification is the communication that we make with parents. So the reviewing the information to determine if a student was in close contact is validated through the health department. They also look to evaluate who has had COVID in the last 90 days, because that would be exempt. Who has been vaccinated, that would be exempt. Then they identify those who would be in need of a quarantine. So what we do is call them, identify you have been in close contact, your son can continue or your daughter can continue to come to school, or you can choose to quarantine. So the process remains the same. It's the notification and choice provided to parents, which is the modification of rule.
So that's based on the conversation between the Department of Health and the parent, is that what I'm hearing?
No.
So a Department of Health calls a parent and says your child has been, identified as being in close contact.
No. They work with our team, and we make that contact with the parents.
Okay, so they are not so the Department of Health should not be and is not contacting parents to identify close contact. Instead, it is the district team who are contacting parents.
Correct.
Identifying. So essentially, that means that the Department of Health, that process is not the same.
The process the health department follows is the same. They go through, they look at the information, they validate who was in close contact based on that information. The choice is the only modification, the choice, which is the choice for the parent to make. And that is communicated to the parent. Parent makes the choice. As an example, I think we have a total of 3 students that have been quarantined total. And we have a total of 3 staff total in the district. So, we're in a much different place than we were 4 or 5 weeks ago.
So essentially, the Department of Health should not at all be contacting parents.
Through the chair, I don't know that that's necessarily true. Mr. Bass, maybe they may do follow-up for cases that it's part of their protocol, but in terms of quarantine, the answer is no.
Through the chair, Dr. Moore is right. Process is basically the same. We can't speak for what the Department of Health is going to do beyond the contact with us when we have a student that may be deemed as a close contact. I mean, we're just basically, following the same protocol, making them aware, and then, as Dr. Moore says, it's the parent's decision.
I just want to make sure that we don't have too many cooks in the kitchen, that if district staff are contacting parents, then it should remain district staff.
Same
It
cooks,
shouldn't
same
remain
cooks are in the kitchen.
with regard to quarantining healthy students. Not talking about sick students. If you're sick, stay home. I'm talking about healthy students, asymptomatic. So thank you for that.
Anybody else? Mrs. Berenborg? Any comments? Okay. Next, moving on, the next item is the approval of the consent agenda. None were pulled, so may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Dr.
I'll
Schiff?
second.
Mrs. Rosario, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Mrs. Berenborg, 5-0. Motion carries. There was nothing pulled. As I stated earlier, we now go to Dr. Moore's item number 13.
13 is a public hearing for the adoption of new and revised policies for 824, so I believe there's a script to follow.
Comments, questions?
There's a script to follow, he said.
There is?
Mrs. Purcell.
Oh, okay. All right, this item, all right, on August 24th, 2021, the board moved approval to set a public hearing date to adopt new and revised district school board policies. The purpose of the revision and new policies is to be consistent with present practice and legislation. The policy change process was followed in accordance with Florida statutes under Florida Administrative Procedures Act, Chapter 120, Rulemaking and the School Board Bylaw 0131. This item deals with adoption of new and revised school board policies. Dr. Moore, have you documented that this public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with state statutes?
Through the chair, yes, I have.
We now recess this meeting, conduct the public hearing as advertised. The public hearing is now in session. Dr. Moore, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
Ms. Parcell? No. Through the chair, there are no written responses.
All right, the public is invited to address this issue at this time. Anybody from the public?
Mr. Browning.
Is there an individual representing an organization, or is?
Mr. Browning, Equity Committee.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Mr. Browning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members, superintendent. Yes, at the last meeting that we had about a couple of weeks ago, the equity meeting, there were some suggestions that were made and provided to the superintendent and to Dr. Jones, who was present at the meeting. I believe Mrs. Berenborg was on video. But I do understand that this is an evolving process, and it's the sustainability policy for the school district after we reach the unitary status. So look forward to going through that process and reaching a unitary status and then sustaining it. So thank you very much for your time and effort.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Mrs. Rosario.
Are we ready to discuss? Not yet.
Pardon?
When we're ready to discuss, I
Okay,
have
you will.
comments.
All right. So the chair concludes that the announced public hearing on the adoption of the new and revised school board policies has been conducted pursuant to notice. An ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. The board meeting is reconvened at this time. Now, school board members, Mrs. Rosario.
Yeah, I watched the equity committee meeting, and I appreciate the comments that you all made. I know that it is what I heard was that it was the position of the NAACP to support a sustainability policy, but timing might be of issue and concern. And I know that you offered some pretty good suggestions. Initially, when this came to the board, that was one of the things that I brought up that for me was a concern, that we were rushing too soon, not receiving feedback from the equity committee prior to it becoming a public or going out for public comment. And the same thing with the NAACP. I just think that we are putting the cart before the horse. I still believe that even though the sustainability policy is something that I believe is needed, so Dr. Jones, thank you for bringing this forward. I just don't see the rush. I don't understand what the rush is. You can't convince me enough to approve a policy that probably won't take place for another months or years. We don't know the feedback from the court. We are not and have not met full unitary status. We don't know where we will be at the end of this year. I just think that we are way too premature. I know that there's an earnest desire to show the community that we are committed to the work of equity and that there is a commitment on the part of this board to establish full unitary status and that the work moving forward will continue. But it's not the right time. I would like us to be on hold. I have not yet heard of any recommendations that you all put forth to be added to this. That's a concern for me as of right now. The board, I'm sorry, I heard, oh. The board, I think that one of the comments that I think you all mentioned was that this appears to be superintendent work group rather than the board work group. Forgive me if I'm not getting all of the details exactly correctly. I know that there is a place in here that says that complaints should be sent and notified to the superintendent. I believe that, and notified to the board chair. I do believe that for accountability purposes, it should be to the board corporate, because we agreed today in our protocols that a board chair, or in particular, any board member individual would not be able to make any, I forget the wording, decisions or come to any conclusions on behalf of the board individually without the board corporate agreeing or voting towards that effect. I'm just looking at my little notes here. I know that there was a concern about people on this work group working after 1 year, not having enough time to serve effectively on that work group. To a certain extent, I can appreciate that, but I would disagree to the extent that these members might actually continue on the subsequent years. We have had previous board chair prior to yourself on 2 years in a row, and some other members, for example, might be recurring members who would sit on that work group. So I don't see a concern with that. But I do see after a year being on, it would give, if we pause, it would give members an opportunity to step down and say, I'm not ready to do this for another year. So I do appreciate that opportunity. Again, I have no idea why we're pushing this policy too soon. I would ask that we could put a pause on this to receive the feedback in writing, review it, see where it fits within this sustainability policy that has been drafted. The recommendations were, though I might not approve of all of them or agree to all of them, I do believe that it is essential that we listen to them, that we receive them in writing, that we review them and see where they would fit within this, within what we have right now. I hope you all would agree. But after careful consideration, if we don't put a hold on it to receive appropriate feedback, I'm afraid that I wouldn't be able to support this for that reason. Thank you.
Dr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Browning. I know it was tough for you to get here tonight, and I appreciate what you said. When you look at this policy, we give 30 days for feedback, and Mr. Browning did respond when he was at the last equity committee, and your points were very, very valid. I've been attending these meetings since late 2019, and I don't think I have missed any of them. Obviously, this is a federally mandated committee, and the joint plan was created in 2018, and we've got some reporting to do soon on that. I'm looking forward to that. But as I said before, I actually said at the equity meeting, I want to get this right. You know, I want to make sure that we are doing it right, because this will not go into effect until we reach unitary status. Hope it's not years away, but you know, we have work to do, and we all pull up our sleeves and do it. One of the main reasons I wanted this is because we want to be ready for unitary status. I don't want, okay, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, this doesn't work, we pay $1 million and we get partial unitary status. Those days are gone. We can't do that anymore. So the equity report, I think, is due to the court in November. We know we still have work to do. I want to communicate the board and the NAACP instead of spending money, so we can continue to do that. And I think it's something we can move forward with at the next equity committee meeting Thursday night, just to talk about it in general, because I think overall we all want the same thing, and that's student success. And I'm here to help do the work. Never meant to push this. I just want to make sure it happens. Overall when we get unitary status, because Mr. Browning, you and I have talked about it. It's been at equity committee agendas where these things happen and they go on a shelf. And I want it to be embedded in what we do on a regular basis. I have no problem looking at, see where we can go with this and hear from the whole equity committee, but and the NAACP obviously, and get it right. So a lot of work has been done on that. I want to thank Dr. Shafty and Mr. Seymour and anybody else who worked on that as far as a policy, because I think this is one of the first we'll ever see when it does happen as far as being in school board policy. And we'll continue to talk about equity. So thank you, Mr. Browning.
Dr. Schiff?
Just a point of clarification, Dr. Jones, because I think I lost you a little bit. I heard you say you wanted a policy, you wanted to make sure we had something when we reached unitary status.
Yes.
Your intent was not to push something through prematurely. Are you advocating then, so are you suggesting that you want this here now so that there is something on the books, which could be later amended if we wanted, or are you suggesting that you would prefer to pause to receive other comments?
I would prefer to pause.
Got it.
Mrs. Barenborg, a comment, please. If
Dr. Lee said the same thing I wanted to ask. So I agree, we should take more input from the equity committee.
I didn't
And
understand.
Can you say that again? You're breaking up.
Sorry. I
agree with you.
We need to focus on this and get more input from equity committee and NAACP.
Okay, so we have, it sounds to me, yes, ma'am, Mrs.
Sorry,
Rosario.
I just wanted to add to that. We did receive their feedback. We received an email with their with their notes, but with Mr. Browning's notes for us to consider. But we haven't. I don't know, board members, did you read it?
Yes.
Because what I don't know is that we're all on the same page with the recommendations, with all of the recommendations. That's what I think that we all need to come together and talk about. So I appreciate the pause.
All right. Any further comments?
Am I able to address Mr. Browning, Mr. Chairman? That-
Yes, go ahead. Address
Mr. Browning, if you
Browning.
don't mind. Can you just clarify for me, because again, I'm hearing, I want to be sensitive to your concerns and the concerns of the Equity Committee. I'm hearing a variety of things addressed on the board. I know that you submitted some comments and concerns, but what I also heard was you appreciating that we were doing this and thanking us and being glad that we're getting somewhere on it. Are you suggesting that you would prefer to wait to have this more fully discussed in recommendations directly from the Equity Committee to the board, or are you suggesting that you would like to see this get into policy and then we can amend it as we move closer to unitary status?
I'm glad that we have a framework that you're starting out. I'm glad that it's in the mindset that the superintendent is pushing for it or supporting the sustainability policy. There were some things in there that I felt needed to be tweaked. For instance, we have a policy where in my office where I work, if there with my department heads, if there is any type of discrimination, that comes to my office, and of course I let the city manager know about it. So I think that would be the same thing. I wouldn't want, that was one of the suggestions. I wouldn't want that to be lost, you know, at a school somewhere, that and the board's held responsible because if there's some kind of legal action that would be taken, we wouldn't want the board members to say, and we never knew about it. So that's why the suggestion was that the board chair or board corporate, as Mrs. Rosario suggested, either way is fine, but that the board is aware that there's something that needs to be fixed. So that being said, I'm fine with getting more input. If that takes a couple of weeks or whenever, I know that the policy will not be ready or go into effect until we have reached unitary status, and there's, you know, there's some work to do. If we neglect after a number of years, there's obviously going to be a lot more to do. Yes, ma'am.
To clarify, the discrimination about which you're speaking, are you suggesting that that's something different than is covered in other board policies about anti-discrimination, anti-harassment, et cetera? Because we have that in other board policies. Are you suggesting there's something separate from those policies that is important and significant that we put here?
If there is a procedure that would allow that the superintendent and the board would know about something that is of a significant level, I think that's sufficient. But if it's not there, whether, you know, it's handled at the school level, I don't think that is enough to make enough notice to the board. I think we are at a place in this joint plan, DSEG policy, whatever you call it, that if there is something significant enough, it needs to be brought up front. If there is a systemic, if you have a group of teachers saying something at one school or it's at multiple schools, the same thing is going on, and I think the board and the chair need to be made aware. So that if that policy, if you have that policy somewhere that says notify the superintendent and the board, then that would be fine too, and that would be covered, and you could refer to that policy. I don't know, I don't want to get into legalese and referencing the policy, but either way that works. That was the intent.
Ms. DeGresta, is this anything you can comment on?
I can always comment.
That you could further this conversation through your comments.
And I think the issue that's being discussed is we have quite a few existing policies that talk about discrimination or complaints about discrimination or harassment currently in policy for lots of categories of employees, and they include the reporting structure that Mr. Browning is talking about. In reviewing the unitary status sustainability policy, the language, at least my interpretation of this language, was a commitment by the superintendent to have a structure to be sure any complaints can be brought forward. We have those currently, but if additional structures were needed, this section of the proposal is simply it's a broader statement of ensuring clearly defined reporting structures. So if additional structures are needed, the superintendent's required to do it. If the existing structures handle everything, then we've got it covered. But this was just a broader, be sure we have a structure.
Is that still too vague for you, Mr. Browning?
I
I know I'm putting you on the spot,
yeah,
and I'm
well,
sorry. So you can decline to answer because this is a conversation we didn't anticipate having.
Yeah, this is one of those where I think I'd have to see, just take a look at that policy, not that I'm just, just see if that policy, I think it should notify the board of anything that's an outlier.
I think I'm hearing that that's covered, but if you're not satisfied that that's covered, then that's an important component.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
suppose this discussion is evidence perhaps that we're not clear.
Yeah, if someone could, send a copy of the policy, and I could say, oh, that's exactly what we're talking about, and that would be enough notification, that would help, so we'd have, kind of some, it would align with the policy that you have. I mean, and it's like, you take, for instance, if you have a supervisor harassing somebody, and I believe the law says that then the company or institution should have known that that was going on. So it's not just, wouldn't be like, a coworker to coworker type of harassment. It's something that's coming maybe from a principal, if it was something that way, and then that there's an obvious onus or notice on the institution that they should have known and should have been able to take care of it. So if something rises to that level, hopefully, it would rise to the level of the policymakers.
So I guess what I hear you saying, and thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. I think what I hear you saying is that there are questions from you representing the Equity Committee or from the Equity Committee. There are questions that it's unclear if those are covered by this policy or not, and then if we had a list of those questions, we could identify whether or not they're covered in other sections, such as anti-discrimination or reporting procedures, or whether they need to be incorporated here because they're not covered elsewhere.
I think I'm following you. So does the other policy say that if there's a level of discrimination that the board and the chair would know about it? That's the question. And I don't want anything to get buried or hidden when these issues are very important.
Right. I hear that as your primary consideration, is the idea that things come to the board so the board is aware should such circumstances arise as you're referring to.
Yes.
I guess where I'm not clear is whether and how those go in this policy, or if this policy operates in concert with other policies that already provide an avenue for that. And that's the part that I guess I would have wished that we had covered in these 30 days, but perhaps didn't. So it remains an open question. I don't have the answer. I'm clear I don't have the answer. So I have to rely on legal counsel, and if you've studied it and you think that it's not there.
Yeah, I haven't seen the other policies in a long time.
I think it's clear that maybe everybody needs to be either updated, and Mr. Browning needs to see the other policies. Mrs. Rosario?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, again, we might not, the recommendations that come to us from the Equity Committee, which is a board's committee, come to us, and then the board makes the decision, obviously with the superintendent's, with the superintendent to agree on which of those policies, all of them, which of those recommendations, all of them, or two of them, or three of them, are doable to agree to and add to the sustainability policy, just as all of your recommendations would be. All of the if you all submitted 200 recommendations, doesn't necessarily mean that we would say it's okay, it's doable for us to implement all 200. Let's start small and work our way big. Those kinds of conversations should happen, I think, in a different forum. So I thank you for the consensus that I hear on putting a hold on this. The next question is, for how long is the hold? How long should we hold on to this? Should we hold on just until we receive feedback, or should we hold on as we move closer? Because in November, we are going to receive the feedback from the Equity Committee in a more formal setting. And then in December, Mrs. Diagresta, when is that report due in December? Do you know off the top of your head? I'm sorry.
I believe it is by the second Monday in December. I believe that's the language, but it's the first couple of weeks in December is when that's due to the court.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
I think I would love to wait until we have that formal meeting with the NAACP in November, which should be the annual feedback in which you provide recommendations, right? Taking a look at that and then taking a look at the sustainability policy hand in hand might give us a good crosswalk to say, well, we can include these recommendations in our sustainability policy or remove some and flip-flop back and forth to make sure that it is something that we can all agree to, that something we can all live with. And submitting those to the court would be, in my eyes, something that would be wonderful to say, look, this is all that we agreed to. Submitting whatever sustainability policy we all can agree to within our final report, I think that would be fantastic. Whether we agree to every single thing or not, at least we're in agreement as to what would be within this policy. So thank you for that, everyone, for this great conversation. I'm happy that we're able to put a hold on it. I'd like to
Dr.
make a
Jones.
motion.
I have something
Oh.
else to say, Kate.
God, that's fine.
Mr. Brown, just know this, that we're very, very committed to this policy. I think it was written well, but obviously we need to do some modifications. And I want to make sure, Dr. Moore, we hear back from the NAACP as soon as possible, just so we know their concerns also. I know Mr. Brown serves on the Equity Committee, and I do know at the last meeting he just said we need to do a pause. So I want to hear some specifics of what their concerns are. So hopefully, again, I want to do it right, but hopefully we can get all the information in, from Equity Committee, from NAACP, so that when we do move forward and ever achieve unitary status, we'll be ready. So the feedback is crucial. Is crucial. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, you have a meeting Thursday night. Is this policy or more specificity that is lacking yet, or is not perhaps the choice of words that, is this going to be a regular item on your Equity Committee meetings, or is it going to be on an as-needed basis?
The sustainability policy, it's not on this week's agenda. It will be in the following, so we can discuss it. So in about 2 more weeks, we'll
Okay.
put it back on, and as things come up, I think we had talked about at the meeting tweaking it if it, as it becomes necessary, because, as we see things are changing, nothing is perfect when you put it out the box. So we'll tweak it and make changes, but we look forward to it in about 2 or 3 weeks. 2 weeks, I
Okay.
think.
I think the good news is here, there is a framework. The framework,
Yes, sir.
we just need more specificity here and there, which I think everyone agrees with. We don't need a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, because as it stands right now on the agenda, it is for us to pass this as is. If we vote no, then it doesn't go through at all.
Can't-
But I'd like to make a motion.
Dr. Moore?
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
There are actually 2 policies to be approved. So what we would have to do is remove the sustainability from the item and then keep the other policy, which deals with payroll.
All right, and I don't know that we need a motion. Can you not just remove it, or do we need a motion to remove it?
I could simply remove the sustainability policy.
Okay. And we've pulled action items before.
We're
for
not pulling
discussion
an
or
action
whatever.
item. The item is as written. I think it's probably best to make a motion to approve and remove the sustainability policy, keeping the payroll policy in place,
All right,
and then take a vote to approve the payroll policy.
all right, so Mrs. Rosario, why don't you make your motion, the one that Dr. Moore just suggested, or in your own words?
Okay, I'd like to make a motion for the unitary status sustainability policy. Let me reword it. I'd like to make a motion to pause the unitary status sustainability policy until December. And I apologize, let me back up here. I don't know if we should have a date. Should we have a date, Dr. Moore, at December 2nd? Or should it be that we pause it until we get feedback from our November equity meeting?
Through the chair, I would not be time specific. In receiving Mr. Browning's feedback, there are opportunities to begin working to make some of those modifications and changes. So as soon as it is ready, the better. As Mr. Browning said, there's a whole heap of work that the Equity Committee needs to engage in to provide a presentation to this board through a joint meeting that takes place during our November workshop, and then to submit the progress report, which is associated to the areas of the joint plan to the courts. So there's a great deal of work that needs to be done. I think the Equity Committee is looking at it because it drastically impacts the work that they're currently doing and will continue to do. So the Equity Committee continues within this policy to do this work. It's been mentioned a number of times, work with the NAACP. Each and every single board member has been notified. Their attorney asked for to be removed from the policy. There were a number of meetings between staff and NAACP to create this specific policy. They were asked not to be part of it. The notifications were taking place. So as I hear some things, that's fine, but as you do the historical review of what actually took place, they're significantly different. But no issues continuing to work with NAACP or work with the Equity Committee. But I really want to push the Equity's attention to a mountain of work that needs to be done, which is these reports. As Mr. Browning says, it's not on this agenda. He and his team have a significant lift in the coming months.
Well, I still hold to my, thank you, Dr. Moore, I still hold to my belief that waiting until our November meeting to receive the full recommendations from the Equity Committee would be critical to what we include or not include within the unitary status sustainability. So I'm sorry, let me go back. I make a motion to pause the unitary status sustainability policy until after our November Equity Committee meeting.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'm just thinking, is that enough time?
Would you like more?
I don't know, I'm just asking. I'm good.
I'm
looking at Mr. Browning again.
I'm good with after I'm good with, if you don't think that's, if you want more time, just
Well, I'm just
amend the
thinking,
motion.
You know, when I brought this
Or-
forward
or
in the 30 days, I thought we'd be hearing more feedback. Mr. Browning gave us the feedback. I thought we might be hearing a little bit more. And I know Dr. Shafty, Mr. Seymour, and others from NAACP worked on this. And again, thank you very much for the work. It was a lot in there when you look at it. But I really honestly thought we might be hearing from some more people within this 30 days. So, you know, is it enough time in November? I mean, again, like Dr. Moore just said with Mr. Browning, they've got a lot to do for that equity report card and report due in December. I don't want to push it. I don't know, Dr. Moore.
I just don't know why we would lock in a specific time. It will come back to the board when it is ready to come back to the board.
Yeah, probably.
And we have a team who's fully dedicated to doing this work. I would hate to go back and say, no, guys, you just have to wait.
Right.
There's no need to pause this work. It's just too important to pause, to be quite honest with you. So having the opportunity to continue to engage in the work, have the conversations
Yeah, exactly.
with multiple individuals. You're right, Doc. I would have hoped there would have been a line out the door
I was hoping, yeah, I thought there
saying
would be.
this is, we've waited, way too many years for this. Finally, the board is willing to stand up and do the right thing to support and protect this particular work. That's what we should strive for. That's what we should want. We should want that level of urgency around this particular work. And thank you, Mr. Browning, for being here and speaking for the line that should be out the door. And let that be a reflection as to why this is so important. Because it's just Mr. Browning here. Just Mr. Browning.
I think, Ms. Rosario, I mean, we're on the right track here. Maybe the way you make a
change.
motion to pause until
Yeah.
sufficient information has been provided by the Equity Committee to the superintendent to be brought back to the board.
Yeah,
And
that-
that could be December, it could
All
be
you need to
January,
do
it could be whenever
is
it is.
Remove that sustainability policy from the item. And then we can
Okay.
continue to work.
So there's a
I'll
motion on
make
the
a-
floor, it doesn't have a second. Can I make a motion?
I was
No.
gonna,
I will second Mrs. Rosario's motion.
thank you.
Would you read the motion, read the motion again? You've amended it to date specific or more general with specific
I make a
feedback?
motion to pause the unitary status sustainability policy until a later date.
Well, I thought your motion originally said until December.
It did, and then
No,
there wasn't a second.
No, he seconded it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jeez,
No,
here we go again.
I second without putting a date on it. I just wanted to, I
Well, hers
withdraw
had
my
a date,
second.
and it didn't have a second. So I was trying to move to simply remove it from consideration here. The motion is just remove the sustainability policy. But we can't do that until there's a vote on the motion that's on the table.
There's a motion on the table, and it was date specific.
Mrs. Rosario could withdraw her motion
She could.
and make a new motion.
She could do that.
I withdraw my motion.
Do you want to make a new one, or should I
I'll
just
make a new
it?
one. I make a motion to pause the unitary status sustainability policy.
Sorry, but we're not pausing, if what you're moving is to pause approval, we're pausing approval of the policy. All that we need to do is remove it from here, is to remove it from the action item. We're just,
There's nothing to act on if it's removed.
and then there's nothing to act on. So we can just move to remove it, and then it stays floating out there until such time as we have sufficient information and revision to put it back on the agenda. But we can't pause it, because at the moment, we
I got
can't
it.
pause
I
something
got
we
it.
haven't approved.
I got it. There wasn't a second for that.
No, ma'am.
So I make a motion to remove the unitary status sustainability policy
From the agenda.
from the agenda.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 I got it.
5-0. We were all on the same page, it was just getting the
Yeah.
words right.
I got it.
Mr. Browning, we're going to get there.
Yeah.
The board believes in it.
And thank you, Mrs. Rosario, for hanging in there and getting it right. All right, so we now have a motion to approve. And would someone, for my benefit, if not others, state the motion that we are voting on? Because I got so many papers here, I can't find it.
Well, okay. Move approval to set public hearing.
This is the public hearing.
This,
For the payroll deduction policy.
oh, I'm sorry.
You're right.
Move approval for the payroll deduction policy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Rosario seconds it. Any further discussion? All in favor? Say
Aye.
aye. Aye. Mrs. Berenberg, aye. Motion carries 5-0. All right. That basically concludes the action agenda.
No, we do have, through the chair, we have the added item 13A, which is the approval of the set public hearing, which was the conversation that took place at workshop today. And this is an item to send policies for public input, to begin the initial date, where we go 30 days to bring an item back, and we had the same discussion we just had. And I'll ask Suzanne to review the 4 policies that we modified based on the conversation that took place during workshop today.
I just find it, I buried it, sorry. School board members, you should have copies, hard copies in front of you, because I wasn't sure that everyone had their computer up this evening. There are 4 policies in front of you. One policy is the public participation at board meetings policy. It's 0169.1. And then there are 3 other policies that I felt needed to be also tweaked if we're going to change the public participation policy. So it was policy 0165 regarding meetings, policy 0166.1 regarding workshops, and policy 0168 regarding minutes. So you have 4 possible policies to be revised.
That's not what we have. We have 0165, 0166.1, 0169.1 dash 928. You said 01.68. Did you just make a mistake in
No,
your speaking?
0168, and it's entitled minutes.
Okay, got it. Got it. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so if we could,
And we have 169.
yes, point 1. Yes, yes, ma'am. So if we could start with that one, 0169.1, which is entitled Public Participation at Board Meetings. We tried to encapsulate your discussion in as few changes as possible, but let's see how we do. If you go down to section A, as an apple, there are some guidelines regarding the amount of time. And we are simply going to refer you down to a new section that we added, section B, but we deleted paragraph 2 in that paragraph, in that subparagraph A, which said that you can talk at various times of the meetings. We want to be a little more specific than that. So if you go down to B, this is the sequence of public speakers. So subparagraph A talks to the non-agenda items, which are germane to the work of the school board. And those non-agenda public speakers will be called to speak prior to the commencement of the regularly scheduled business meetings at 5:30 p.m. We were time specific. And there's a 30-minute limit on that section unless it's extended by a presiding officer. Your meeting, and I want to explain why I'm using that phrase. The presiding officer is typically the chairman, but in other portions of your board policy regarding speaking and the running of the meeting, the presiding officer makes most decisions, but there's a few places where it's by a vote of the school board. But at that moment, the school board meeting will not have been gavelled to order. This is just simply accepting the public comment. It's not the business meeting, you're just accepting the public comment. So you're really not in a forum, if you will, for the board to act, to take a motion. So for this particular section, I've said the presiding officer is the individual who can extend that period of time if as needed. So the presiding officer has that authority. And then the last comment is the section will not be, that portion will not be televised. Okay, so that's, I think that's what I heard discussed. So paragraph number 2 is if there is not sufficient time during the non-agenda public speaking portion, what happens? And there was some discussion of it that individuals that weren't able to speak because the time expired and no more time could be extended, those people would just come back at the next board meeting and re-sign up. So that's what paragraph 2 speaks to, is individuals who weren't non-agenda item public speakers, didn't have a chance to speak, they would come back at a future meeting to have their chance to speak. And then paragraph number 3, this talks about the public comment portion, the citizen input portion that you have on your typical school board meeting agenda. And this is something that's handled prior to the consent agenda. So the meeting has been gavelled to order at this point. You've gone through your typical introductory portions of your meeting, approved your orders of the day, and you get to your typical citizen input. This portion of the meeting is limited to 60 minutes unless extended by a vote of the school board. You're now in a meeting, so you could vote to extend that amount of time. And then someone mentioned it, I'm afraid I'm not going to remember who, but someone mentioned that if we have more than speakers than we have time, and we can't extend anymore and we have more speakers than time, then the chair in this particular proposal has the authority to determine to reduce the time from 3 minutes to say everybody gets 2 minutes, or from 3 minutes everybody gets 2.5. So depending upon the number of people that we have that have come to speak during this public comment section during the board meeting, the chairman has the authority to adjust that 3 minutes to something less in order to allow everyone the opportunity to speak.
But if we want to leave it at 3 minutes, the chair has the authority to call a vote to extend the 60 minutes to something longer to accommodate all the speakers. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Then a little further down on that second page is the statement about the limit on the topics for public comment. And public comment is limited to consent and action agenda items. And then if someone were to come at that 30-minute before the meeting gets started to speak about non-agenda items, that information needs to be germane to the business of the board. So they wouldn't come to speak to you about, I don't know, I'm going to be silly, dog catching, because that's not your business. They would go someplace else to have that public discussion. They come to you to speak about issues germane to the business of the board. So that's the one. So if you can now look to policy 0165 regarding meetings. He's the chairman, ma'am.
When are we going to provide feedback? Are we going to wait until Mrs. Diagresta continues, or now that we're on here, shall we?
I think we ought to provide feedback as we go while we're in the, having that train of thought. Go ahead, Mrs.
Okay.
Garland.
Just a little bit of feedback for the public who were not prepared for this item. I think it's important that they understand that this item was brought forth by by Dr. Jones earlier today. This was an item that obviously, as you're hearing, will change citizen input within our board meetings. But I have some questions here that were discussed earlier but not included or not specific. If we look at the first page, B1, persons speaking to non-agenda items which are germane to the work of the school board will be called to speak prior to the commencement of the regular scheduled business meeting at 5:30 p.m. Now, that language sounds a little ambiguous because it could be understood that the business meeting starts at 5:30 p.m. or that the non-agenda items would begin at 5:30 p.m. So I wish that we could be a little bit more clear. For example, persons speaking to non-agenda items which are germane to the work of the school board will be called to speak at 5:30 p.m. prior to the commencement of the regular scheduled business meeting. That makes a big difference in terms of understanding, so it's not ambiguous to the public as they're reading. That policy can be misinterpreted either way. So that I think needs to change. As well, this does not indicate that the non-agenda items, that citizens will have 3 minutes to speak on non-agenda items. So it should actually be here. We didn't talk about minimizing their 3 minutes earlier today.
It's in the current language. We didn't make any changes to that language. It's up in A1.
No, I'm talking about non-agenda items, not agenda items.
But if you look at A1, in green at the end, it says, as further explained in
Okay,
paragraph B below.
so we're still keeping three,
Yes,
okay, so we're
yes.
keeping 3 minutes to all. Okay, okay, thank you. All right, I see that.
Unless, by determination of the chair, there are more speakers than allowed for in the current time at 3 minutes, at which point the chair can reduce the amount of time in order to accommodate having all speakers the ability, given the ability
But
to speak.
that's at a board meeting, not at the non-agenda items.
Or the chair can extend the 30 minutes
Yeah,
beyond let's say there's 10 speakers and only 8 have spoken. You can extend, the chair, is the way this reads, the chair can extend it for another to accommodate those final 2 speakers. So we would start the business meeting 10 minutes late.
Right, but if we had, making this up, 15 speakers at 3 minutes each, that's 45 minutes. You could decide to start
extend it.
at 6:15, or you could reduce, or does this
Right.
allow you to reduce the time to 2.5
Right.
meetings to keep it in, to 2.5 minutes, to keep it in the 30 minutes?
Right.
I think that's what there's some lack of clarity about.
so why don't we consider then not going into our business meeting? The possibility of going into the business meeting is concerning for me. So why don't we just start it at 5:15? And if you have that, you need that extra 15 minutes, you'll have it before the 6 PM. If not, then we have 15 minutes.
Well-
If not, then we have 15 minutes in between
Right.
that meeting and our business meeting.
But I just used a random example.
But it makes sense.
Right, but it could be 5:15, it could be 5 o'clock, it could be 5:20. We have no idea how many people would come to speak. So whether it's 5:15 or 5:30 is fairly random based on an arbitrary assessment of something we don't know at the moment of how many people would speak at that point.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
So half an hour may be quite enough. And so given that our other meeting ends at 4, that gives staff limited time to, sometimes there are actions that staff need to take between the workshop and the business meeting to amend items to bring them to the business meeting. It also gives us limited time to actually eat and do some other work we may need to do between meetings. So my concern is that we have meetings that go from 1 to 4.
Yeah, but we're gonna attend those earlier. Remember, we
Well,
agreed
we
that.
haven't confirmed that. I'm hoping that will happen.
Well,
But-
let's confirm it now, because that's gonna make a
Because
big
those meetings
difference.
always run over. Those meetings
We shouldn't, yeah.
Well, but they do, every
I know.
time. They run to 4:30, they run to 4:45, and we're getting ourselves really bollocksed up in here.
I don't disagree with you, but you're right, we should confirm. Dr. Moore, is it confirmed that we have all spoken the same language and request that our workshops and board discussions begin earlier? Instead of 1 o'clock, maybe 11 or 12 o'clock, to allow for some overage if needed, and yet not so close to our business meetings.
Through the chair, that was the consensus that I had. And there was all nodding heads. If we were to start at 11, 12, I think we'd be in good shape. We've only had 2 this year go over the extended time.
So
This academic year.
No, this calendar year. Yeah. Yeah, go back and watch it.
And,
Close.
you know, depending on what the topics for the workshop, whether it's the superintendent or the board's workshop, it can be 11 o'clock one Tuesday, and it could be 12 o'clock the next, based on the agenda topic. So it can be flexible, but I think starting earlier, you know, my inclination would be never have to cut somebody off or keep them from speaking if they made the effort to come here. So their little judgment, would have to be exercised, but my inclination would be, if we don't have enough time, whenever we start this part of, whether it's 5 o'clock or 5:15, if people care enough to come and speak to the board about non-action items, then we should let them speak.
I agree. I just think that we should reconsider the 5:30 to 5:15. At 5:30, we have citizens already coming in to sit down at their seat. Sometimes you have media coming in, sometimes there's, rustling of the chairs. It could be.
Why don't we just make it 5?
I'm okay with that.
Let's just make it 5 o'clock.
Make it 5 o'clock.
And if we get done in 20 minutes, you'll have time.
Yep.
take a walk around the building.
I'm good with that.
Could we start more, I agree with you about if people make the effort to come, they should be heard. What happens if, my concern is that if we make it at 5, we have a meeting that goes until 4, we come back at 5, the 5 o'clock meeting may take 15 minutes, it may take 30 minutes, it chops up. And for those of us who need a break in between to do some other work, to make phone calls, to get food, whatever it is, it precludes the ability to do that.
May I?
Sure.
Based on what we just heard as confirmation from consensus, that should not happen. If we start our meetings at 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, we should be done by 3. We shouldn't go over our meetings. Correct, Dr. Moore?
That is the goal.
That is the goal. So even at 3 o'clock, we should not be in a meeting past 4 o'clock. Yeah, if we go till, let's say we go till 4, right? We end at 4, and then we're back at 5, and we have 2 speakers, 3 speakers. We come back at 5 to hear those comments until 5:10. And then we have 5:10 until 6 o'clock. It's an impractical way to do it until we have a better sense, I think, of how this is gonna work. But maybe we can amend it, I won't belabor it. I'd like to see how it works that way. The whole idea is to have the 30 minutes, at least from
That's
5
right.
to 5:30, and still allow some leeway for extra time before the business meeting.
And it certainly makes more sense to back it up and start the day earlier than push it later at night, because as you've all pointed out, by 9:30, 10 o'clock with some of these nights, I mean,
I'm okay with 5 or 5:15.
if we had to change,
5.
let's
Dr.
make it
Moore
5
said 5.
o'clock. We either start the workshops at 11 or 12, depending on the agenda. Dr. Moore can consult with the chair, whether it's me or somebody else, and that's when we'll start. If it's not a large agenda, we can start at noon.
Okay.
11. I think that works.
I had another, thank you so much for that. I had another comment, let me see, on the next page. Okay, number 2, all the way on top, reads, "Those who signed up to speak to a non-agenda item but did not get a chance to speak." Those who signed up to speak to a non-agenda item, that would be at the 5 o'clock, but did not get a chance to speak, will need to return to a subsequent meeting. I don't recall us talking about that. What I recall was giving them an opportunity to speak at the end of our meeting, not at a subsequent meeting. That person came all the way over here. If they don't say what they need to say by the time, the board meeting finishes, if we don't get to hear everyone by that time, we should allow that person an opportunity to speak at the end of our meeting, not come back to the next board meeting in 2 weeks.
Well, the real goal is to have everybody be, I agree.
Okay.
We
so
should make it
we're-
as easy as possible,
So-
but hopefully we can, over that hour that we've now allowed, we can accommodate everybody, particularly for a non-agenda item. I mean,
Right.
I'm sure there's going to be an exception. There always is to every rule, but they should be very infrequent.
Okay. So, but I think we need to be clear about that so there aren't misunderstandings. So if everyone is okay, instead of at a subsequent meeting, I don't know, who's taking notes on this? Mrs. Diagresta?
3 or 4 people.
Instead of at a subsequent meeting, it would be at the end of that business meeting, that evening's business meeting.
Yeah, the subsequent meeting was from the Orange County policy. That's where that language came from.
Okay, it also says no preference.
I'm sorry, when? At the end of the meeting after it is adjourned, at the end of the meeting after the superintendent, when at the end of the meeting?
Board members, when do you
there-
want that follow-up?
I would say after adjournment.
After
Because
adjournment?
The other meeting, other part is happening before we begin the meeting. So, I mean, I want them to speak that day too. I think we talked about both, whether it be into the meeting or the next time, but yeah, I think it's important that they have it on that day.
Yeah, and I think you adjourn the meeting, and then we, much like it's not an official meeting when they speak before the meeting starts, we adjourn the meeting, and then we provide for additional time for citizen input.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just, I'll reserve my. And then the next line reads, still on number 2, no preference in the speaking order will be given. I heard that this would be on a first-come, first-served basis.
Right.
That's in the subsequent meeting.
That's in a subsequent meeting, that no longer is relevant.
Okay, so we can remove that entire sentence then. Just want to make sure we all get it. Okay, and the last C, highlighted in green, public comment shall be limited to public comment shall be limited to consent and action agenda items and other topics germane to the work of the school board. Again, very ambiguous. That basically says that public comment, no matter when we hear it, can be to consent, action, or germane items.
Well, we ought to take the
the
germane
school board.
items out, because we've already agreed that it's consent and action items where the public citizen input will be accepted, and get rid of
Not
other
the first
topics
part,
that are
though.
not germane. Because the other
That's what he's
topics that
saying.
are germane are what we've set up the
end.
Yeah, but this
pre-meeting
covers that.
discussion for.
I think one of the ways that we can get around that is to just be clear which business meetings it would be. So, public comment at business meetings shall be limited to consent and action agenda items, period.
That's fine.
Where's the,
All other topics germane to the school board will be held at the we should give it a name, at the non-agenda items meeting.
The 5 o'clock meeting.
We don't have a time, we need a name for that. We need a name for the non-agenda item time frame.
publics are invited to speak? It's not, it is things that are not on the agenda. The public is invited to speak to topics that are not on the agenda for that night. It's non-agenda items.
Citizen input on non-agenda items.
That's fine, we just need a name because I keep, okay, citizen
Input on non-agenda items.
input on
Okay.
non-agenda items. All right, so I'm just going to read that again. So C should read, public comment at board meetings, or public comment at business meetings shall be limited to consent and action agenda items, period. All other topics germane to the work of the school board shall be limited to citizen input at non-agenda items. Citizen input at non-agenda meetings. Did you all get that?
Yep.
You want me to repeat it?
Yes, because we're
Okay.
struggling over here.
Public comment at business meetings shall be limited to consent and action agenda items, period. All other topics germane to the work of the school board shall be limited to citizen input at non-agenda meetings.
No. No,
What's a non-agenda meeting?
The 5 o'clock to 5:30.
that, The 5 o'clock to, or whatever time that is for citizen input on non-agenda items. It's not its own meeting. So citizen input on topics germane to the work of the school board that are not on the evening's business agenda shall be heard prior to the meeting, or some such thing. Prior to the business meeting. We could be at this all night.
Okay.
Wait,
Are we
let me
ready?
see, it's called pre-agenda public comment period in Orange County. Can we just give it that name? Pre-agenda public comment
Sure.
period.
Let's just call it pre-agenda public comment.
Okay, so I'll read that one more time. Public comment at business meetings shall be limited to consent and action agenda items, period. All other topics germane to the work of the school board shall be limited to,
Can we say shall be heard during, as opposed to shall be limited?
sure,
I'm okay. Shall be heard during the
shall be heard
comment.
during the pre-agenda public comment.
Is that how it is in Orange County?
But it actually says period protocol. Pre-agenda public comment period.
All right, are we good with the,
Yes, I think so.
and we can move to,
Did you get that, Dr. Moore?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, you got it.
all right, we can move to the next, which is 0165.
Yep.
So a little history first, just briefly. Back when the school board, many years ago, adopted these policies, there's a provision that requires the board on an annual basis to adopt a resolution that speaks to how meetings are recorded in the seating configuration, right? And then over time, that policy was actually revised to just talk about work sessions. And business meetings were dropped out of that. But the school board has a resolution that was last adopted in 2017 that speaks to seating configurations and recordings and little details about a meeting. In speaking with Dr. Moore, he requested that we not have these extraneous other documents, and if at all possible, put it into the policy if it's a policy appropriate statement. And so what we tried to do with these next 3 policies was to take information from that resolution that talked about how meetings are set up and put them into the policies, and then take out language that talks about having a separate resolution. So that's kind of the backdrop to all of this. So if you look at 0165 meetings, you'll see the green that talks about regular and specially called business meetings. And then the meetings that will not be video or audio recorded are those meetings which are confidential, right? So an example would be if, and we've not had one in many, many, many years, but if the school board had to conduct a student expulsion hearing, those are held in a separate room. The recordings are not on, and parents or students are present for those. So a confidential school board meeting would not be subject to this recording. And then this is also where we placed into policy about the non-agenda item public comment, which has now been renamed to pre-agenda public comment. So that verbiage needs to, the name needs to change will not be televised, video recorded, or otherwise posted to the website.
So this is, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So this has been in resolution, but now Dr. Moore had wanted it in policy to kind of have it aligned.
Through the chair, I just think it is good practice to have things in policy. When you have things in resolutions, they get lost. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know about this resolution until Suzanne shared it with me, but have combed over policies even prior to arriving here in Indian River County. If it's important, we need to have it in policy.
Okay. Move on.
I'm sorry, moving on to 0166.1. This is the policy with regard to workshops and other types of work sessions. The existing policy speaks to a variety of different, the policy applies to workshops, discussion sessions, roundtable sessions, information sessions, blah, blah, blah. I won't read it to you. And this was the policy that said that we're going to have a resolution that speaks to how these particular meetings will be set up. And so rather than looking to that other document, I simply inserted a sentence, which is how these meetings in that resolution were to be handled. They'll be video recorded and posted to the website.
Oh, sorry, Mrs. Rosario.
Thank you. I want to go back to the other one for a minute, the one on meetings. Why do we have two separate policies here? Why can't we combine meetings and workshops and discussion sessions in one? So one policy discusses workshops and the other one discusses meetings. Business meetings. I understand that one is addressing business meetings alone, while the other one is discussing workshops, which are superintendent workshops. But I just don't understand why there are two separate. Can we not combine them? That's my first question. My other question is, on the policy 0165, highlighted in green, it reads, all regular and specially called business meetings shall be video and audio recorded. But so are our superintendent workshops and discussion sessions. So why not add in there all regular and specially called business meetings, discussion sessions, and superintendent workshops? I know it says in all board meetings, but there are meetings that are not video recorded. So that wouldn't be right. So that first line, all regular and specially called business meetings, we should add, right after business meetings, we should add all regular and specially called business meetings, discussion sessions, and superintendent workshops.
I personally think we ought to keep them separate.
Yeah,
One's a board workshop, the other's a superintendent workshop. It's not official business of the board. I just think it's been separate, and I think it ought to continue to be, even though there's a lot of overlap. That's just my opinion.
But they are official board meetings. They are all official work of the board.
but in not business meetings, this is actually a
business
question for
meetings.
Suzanne. Are we only acting in a quasi-judicial capacity at business meetings, not at workshops and discussion sections, which changes the whole sentence?
You are not acting in a quasi-judicial capacity at a school board business meeting. A quasi-judicial
And meetings, okay, sorry, I misread.
meeting would be if the board decided to handle an employee termination hearing and you sat as the deciding hearing officer, that's quasi-judicial. Union impasse hearings, you sit quasi-judicial. Student
I just
expulsion
misread the
hearings are
language on it.
quasi-judicial. So This board meeting is legislative in nature. It's not quasi-judicial. You're not sitting as a judge, hearing facts and evidence and.
I personally like them separate.
Yeah, you're mixing apples and oranges at the margin. I just think it's wiser and safer to have two separate policies, even if a lot of the wording is similar. Mrs. Berenborg, I can't tell whether you have your hand up, if you care to contribute to this conversation.
Yeah, I don't see why we're taking the time to try to put 3 policies together when they're already written, and I think they do a fine job. I could see taking the time to do that if they weren't well written, but I think as they are and the changes to be made, I think that's fine. Let's move on.
Okay. Policy minutes.
Yes, 0168. And you'll see down towards the bottom, I've just, rather than just recordings, I've put video or audio recordings are made for the administrative aid. And then I've made a reference to these other 2 policies, 0165 and 0166.1.
Pretty clear. All right.
Through the chair, I just want to, if we're ready to vote, this is to send it to public hearing, so there'll be plenty of opportunity for the community to come back, provide input over the 30 days, and I would hope, as we push this out and get it back, that we spread the word, get it publicly noticed, so we can get feedback from the community regarding these changes. So this is, we're not approving, this is not going into policy, it's not action that the board is taking other than to advertise, so we can actually get input from the community.
Do we need a motion to approve the
Okay, I
public
have some.
hearing?
Dr. Jones wanted to make
For
a
the
point. and then
motion,
we
I
can-
just, as Ms. Rosario stated, I did bring this up today, and I want to thank the board for looking at all of this. It was on our agenda for the workshop under citizen input, and I brought the item to the agenda. Been attending some Florida School Board Association meetings through Teams, and you know, we're all trying to figure out how we get the business of the board done while listening to our citizens during the consent and action items, which is so very, very important. But one thing I think that most of us agreed on is that we are here for the education of our students, and we want to get the business of the board done, again, with having some before the board meeting on maybe some things that are not on the agenda, and then getting to the agenda itself through consent and action items and listening to people. But I think all of us up here realize we're here for our students, and we want to keep that up front. So I thank the board for even taking a look at this today. I really appreciate it.
All right.
Move approval
Schiff.
to send this policy for public hearing as amended.
Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Mrs. Rosario, are you in favor?
Sure.
Motion
Yes.
carries 5-0. Okay. It looks like the next item is superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a very brief presentation on our spring state assessment results, which were released by the Florida Department of Education. These results, as you know, very, very different in terms of results. So I just kind of wanted to go over some information regarding the results and how we did as a school system. And as you know, last year was COVID and the ongoing frustrations and impact of instruction as we move through that particular year. And if we could just get that thing queued on up. He's been requesting a new computer there for about 3 months. Yeah, he has been. But there it is. So, as you know, only about 11% of the districts elected to receive official grades. If our district would have received to do that, we would have maintained a letter grade of B. And I think that's important to note. We were able to maintain a letter grade of B in the midst of a pandemic. If you look at the percent of schools that were A or a B in 1819, it was actually 81% of the districts in the state of Florida. Compared to 2021, you see significant regression in terms of the percent of A's and B's, down to 51%. Keeping in mind, Indian River County is one of those particular districts. When you look at the number of districts that maintain their letter grade, whether it's A to A, B to B, C to C, there were 30 districts, and 37 that actually regressed. So when you look at how we maintain from pre-pandemic to the outcome after the end of the first year of a pandemic, you can see the district weathered that storm very, very successfully. When you dig a little bit deeper, you see the level of regression. And across the entire state, there's a significant amount of regression. But when you look at the accountability system and the actual points lost, the average district in the state of Florida lost 23 points. The school district of Indian River County also decreased, but only decreased 14 percentage points. Once again, looking at how we leverage the particular storm. When you look at state rankings, and state rankings is how our strategic plan is built, it looks at all of the areas of accountability, and it ranks our districts in comparison to where we were in 1819. So in 1819, we were a letter grade of B. We were ranked 38 in total. At the end of the pandemic year, 2021, you do that same ranking, same methodology, we move up to 29. So looking at how districts work together to pull together quality education in the midst of a pandemic, we improved nine rankings in comparison to our other counties. When you continue to dig a little bit deeper and you look at overall student scoring level 3, 4, and 5 in English language arts, math, science, and social studies, in 1819 we were 38. And then in 2021, we moved 10 position rankings to 28. When you look at just learning gains, we were 34th in 1819 and moved to 27th. And you see we remained stagnant in our bottom quartile at 28th. So we still have work to do there. Now, where we are in terms of 2021, although you see improvements in overall student scoring at 3 or above, or learning gains, we should not be satisfied with that outcome. It's just an acknowledgement of doing outstanding work in the midst of very, very complex times. All 67 districts had to deal with the same realities of COVID. This is an acknowledgement of the work that our teachers and our principals and our support teams did over the course of the year in response to that pandemic. So that was just some quick information. As that information was released, we kind of wanted to close the books on last year. Once again, very, very proud of the efforts that took place, and we're very focused in on what we're doing as it relates to teaching and learning now. Looking forward to continuing the conversation and presentations regarding where we are now. A number of you know that we just went through our process of Datacom, a day-long, intense process of meeting with principals, looking at their specific realities, their struggles that they are experiencing, and where we as a school system can work shoulder to shoulder with them and support them to move the needle as it relates academically. And have no mistakes about it, this pandemic has put us in a very difficult situation, and the level of stress that's being experienced at all levels of the organization is high. And it's a level of stress because our faculty, our staff, our teachers, our support staff, they're all willing to do whatever needs to be done to be in the best interest of children. And it is hard, complex work. And it struggles. You're very used to seeing students, when you greet them back in a school year, you know academically where they're typically going to be, especially in kindergarten, in first grade. Students are coming in drastically below where they typically would be. But we have to accelerate them to get them where they need to be. So just continue to shout out and acknowledge the hard work that's taking place in our schools. Our teachers are learning new curriculums across the board. That is new behaviors for teachers. There are new systems in place to support and maximize planning, because we know planning is what drives the quality instruction, giving teachers the time. there's a lot of things that are new, but I couldn't be prouder of the ongoing effort that educators are making in our buildings to give children everything they need. So we're very, very encouraged with what we see, very encouraged by the will, by the skill, and ultimately the belief that is in our schools to move this district forward. So just a very, very brief presentation, and looking forward to continuing that conversation with our board. That is the presentation for this evening.
Pardon me? Yes, Mrs. Berenborg.
Yeah, I have a question about the data. You mentioned that we were a B, but you didn't ask for a ranking. So did you just have that calculated internally?
No, that is the information related by the received from the state. So that's not an internal data point that we created. The percent of overall points is there's a range associated with letter grades, and that would be the letter grade that we would have.
Okay, did they also give you then letter grades for the schools?
They did have letter grades they didn't give us letter grades. They used the same methodology for schools. And it's important to know, as you look at schools, when you start at 62% of your students in school and you grow to 85% of students in school, that's where you see the impact. And as I debrief with principals, especially in elementary school, you have one grade that made up learning gains, just one grade. So it is not reflective of the quality of learning that took place over the school year. You have teachers in our virtual or transitional model who are teaching students from multiple schools. So they did provide those percents. We as a district, as the overwhelming 89% of the districts did, chose not to have letter grades because it is not reflective of the work in progress that took place.
I understand that, but were there any celebrations that we could mention?
Rosewood maintained a letter grade, and that is Cassie Flores, who was the principal there last year. At Glendale Elementary School, it actually improved a letter grade under the leadership of Mr. Faust, moving from a C to a B. We had a number of schools that maintained their C's or B. So we were impacted. There's no two ways about it. But those two celebrations do stand out, Ms. Flores and Mr. Faust, as well as their support teams. And as I acknowledge those, I do not by any means want to diminish the effort and support of all of our schools. We had.
Absolutely. Okay. I just want to make sure that, we look at the bright spots, because I know we've always talked about those in the past because we have different data, obviously. I am not saying that every school didn't try. There were only one school or two schools that raised their letter grade. One, I thought there was another one.
No, that was
Okay.
No, I know, right?
Okay. That's pretty good, though. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Jones.
We're in board member report, okay.
No, I have a question for
I'm
Dr.
sorry,
Moore.
Oh.
Before that, Dr. Moore, where on the DOE are you getting the school letter grades? Because I'm on the DOE now and downloaded the 20.
They did not release letter grades. They just released the academic information. So that maybe it's not on the DOE's page, but I can send it to the board. That's why.
Please.
Right.
If you're reporting on data, I think that the board should absolutely receive that, because there's nothing on the DOE, on the Florida Department of Ed website that indicates these school grades.
Right.
I'm looking at it right now.
They're-
The only one that received a school grade in our district, according to this chart for 2020, 2021 school year, is Sebastian Charter High School, which they received an A. Congratulations to them. And Imagine at South Vero, they received an A.
There are no letter,
Congratulations.
we're just connecting the associated points. So there's not letter grades for 89% of the school districts across the state. So this is the year that because of the pandemic, districts had the opportunity to say.
I get that, but you're saying that some of the schools one maintained their A, one moved from a C to a B, but it's not here. So then
Right.
you said that the state sent that to you in a separate
In a
email?
file, which is probably on EdStats,
Okay.
where that would be located. I'm just simply presenting it in the board in a very simplified process so you can understand and not have to weave through all of the state's data set.
Well, thank you, and I look forward to receiving that data. Is there a way that we can get that data out, posted on the website? We do have a lot of community members that would be interested in taking a look at that data.
So we're pushing out our school profiles shortly, which will include all of that information. So yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Board member matters.
Thank you. I do have a few things. Finally got to Sebastian River High School. They did not have to cancel a football game due to the rain. It was beautiful, and the field looked great. The band looked great. Congratulations to Mr. Cummings. And obviously, I'll be heading back to Vero for their home game. I did attend the funeral for Coach Zaluki, held at the Citrus Bowl on Sunday. I worked with him while I was principal at Sebastian River High School for 11 years. He will certainly be missed in this community. He did so many things for our students. And as Mr. Barefoot said at the beginning, in our thoughts, obviously, the Zaluki family, Roy Robinson, who was a bus driver here for over 30 years. I think they're recognizing him on Friday at the bus transportation. And then, of course, Carolyn Reddish. I worked with her when I was executive director of secondary. She was not the graduation coach at Sebastian River High School when she passed, but she was interning for a master's degree, so she was there quite often. And they are all in our thoughts and prayers. I was honored to be invited to the dedication to Martha Hudson. She was our first principal of the Alternative Center, and I worked closely with Martha when I was dean of Vero Beach High School, and then when I was Gifford Middle principal, and she was the alternative principal, a lady with class, and I'm glad that we recognized her. I happened to be at the district office on Friday when they were having the Datacom meeting, and I popped in a little bit. But thank you to the school personnel, administrators, teachers, support staff, because everyone is working their tails off. And that is what I like to see as a board member, the business of the board. What are you doing for our students? And what I did like is at the end when Dr. Moore and his staff said, what can we do to help? And that's the key. It's not like you're going to do it, these are the rules, but what we're doing here, can we help? And Dr. Moore, at the same time, what can the board do to help? We need to continue to look at that. Dr. McMahon deserves an award for Power BI. If you look at COVID, okay, I look at it each day. I think 3 schools were oranged yesterday. Maybe that was this morning, but I don't know, but that is great information for parents. And I was thinking when we started this, if I had an elementary school student, a middle school teacher, or student in high school, I'd say, here's your mask, wear it if you need to. That's what I'd probably say as a mom. But thank you for doing that. Thank you for making us aware of what's going on. I just think it's wonderful that we looked at it school by school, and we all talked about that at the last board meeting, looking at the data for the schools. Dr. Jacobs, you had a huge job today for protocols. You know, I'm pleased with how we move forward, and it's going to happen. You know, we were master board trained. We're going to get those protocols, and we're not going to give up on that. And I love the collegiality and dialogue. I think that's important. We can agree to disagree, but we can reach consensus. That ESE parent advisory, I've been attending those since last year. Rachel Morey and her team, Dr. Moore, they're impressive in those meetings, and I'm very proud of them. I did go to the high-tech meeting. I didn't say anything. I was just listening for retired educators and Mr. Fagan bringing the retired educators in and looking at other plans, especially for prescription costs. That is so, they're so grateful, and I appreciate that also. Encourage everyone to come to the equity meeting on Thursday. I know he has a busy agenda, and we'll get to the unitary status probably the next meeting, but that is a federally mandated meeting, and obviously the DSEG order is the plaintiff, NAACP, and the board, the defendant. We want to move forward with that and hopefully reach unitary status. The Economic Development Council, that was really interesting. Dr. Moore, they talked about a site here in Indian River County to build the containers for container homes, and they're just starting that, and this is obviously low-budget homes, and it's not building them here, possibly Felsmere, I don't know, but building the actual containers for those. And I learned quite a bit at that meeting. It was, again, bringing jobs into the area. To Osceola rebranding, I'm sorry we couldn't do that in person, but the rebranding was absolutely wonderful, so congratulations to Osceola staff. And again, thank you to the teachers, administrators, and support staff, just, coming in each and every day and working hard for our kids. And finally, Mrs. Berenborg, I hope you feel better. That's it for me, thank you.
All right, Mrs. Berenborg, would you like to go next? Member Matters?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I just flew back yesterday, and I usually get a lovely cold after I fly. So, yeah, I didn't want people to perceive that, I was going to give you anything. So that's why I decided to socially distance. I wanted to, first of all, thank, Dr. McMahon and Dr. Jacobs for all their work. They don't get thanked enough for all they do for this district, and I don't think people realize what they do behind the scenes. So I appreciate all the pretty colors, and I love the green, so thank you for that. I wanted to say thank you to all the donations. When we approved the consent agenda, I couldn't chime in fast enough, but we did get several donations that people have been willing to give to our schools and our programs, and we really appreciate that. I did visit Osceola's Fab Lab on my way to the airport, and I wanted to stop in and see it because they couldn't have the rebranding with all of us there, but I asked whether or not I could go see it, and I got to watch Yoda being created in the 3D machine, so that was really nice, and the kids were so into learning the software and the programming and STEAM in action, so I love that. Thank you to Dr. Jones for your wonderful donation for the Kids at Hope Executive Roundtable Golf Tournament. Again, if we can get the word out, we still need some things. I was able to grab some other prizes when I was on my little trip, so that was helpful. And the equity meetings have been going very well, I think. Actually, the one the other day was supposed to go till 10 p.m. and finished at 8, so thank you, Mr. Browning, for that. But I also think that we're getting the work done there, so appreciate everybody that attends those and is really helping move that work forward. Also, I just wanted to give a little shout out again. You heard Rachel Morey talk about that earlier in the meeting. The virtual 5K for ESE is I think it's this Saturday, but it's virtual. So I already signed up. I can't wait to get my shirt. But I wanted to just put it out there that they're raising money for that, and I'll race you. Anyway, the one thing that we didn't bring up with all our little changes that we put out there for the protocol is the change that has to happen to the form. So we really need to look at the form that people sign for the citizen input, and now probably there needs to either be one form or two forms, I'm not quite sure. But that probably needs to go on our next agenda for creating the forms. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, the form, I think Dr. Moore acknowledged during the conversation that form had to be changed. Next, Mrs. Rosario.
Yes, but doesn't that form need to be changed after the policy is passed? So there's no rush to.
It follows, but we can do a draft. It's not a problem.
There's just such a rush. Thank you, Mr. Barefoot. I don't really have that much to say, except two items here that I wanted to thank publicly for their Tools for Schools fundraiser. They raised $31,000. Actually, it's $31,020. Of which those funds were gifted to the Education Foundation of Indian River County. So obviously those funds are going to wind up back into our schools, which is a wonderful thing. So thank you, Publix, for that. I also wanted to congratulate the high impact grant winners from the Education Foundation as well. Close to $55,000 were granted to several schools on this list: Indian River Academy, Indian River Charter High, Gifford Middle, Liberty Magnet, Osceola Magnet, Rosewood Magnet, Sebastian River High, Storm Grove Middle, Vero Beach Elementary, Vero Beach High, and then Wabasso School. So lots of money were distributed, were gifted to them. I'm so excited because I'm just eager to see where those monies are going to go, be used in those schools. Many of them are going to be used for items that will speak directly to their choice, why they are a choice school, gardens, STEAM programs, automotive, electrical trainers, dive deep and soar high. So there are a lot of different activities that are on here and programs that should obviously impact student achievement and interest. So I'm excited about that, and that's all I have to report.
Good. Dr. Schiff?
I really don't have anything to add, just to acknowledge that also on the consent agenda is the approval of the Florida Safe Schools Assessment Tool, and all of the work that Mr. Teskey and his team and local law enforcement have put into the maintaining the safety of our schools. So thank you to law enforcement and others for that. Other than that, I don't have anything. Thank you.
All right, the only thing that I have is I had a meeting this morning with representatives over at the United Way with representatives of Children's Trust. I believe they have a meeting coming up with Dr. Moore, and he's had conversations with them in the past. As you will recall, it was an attempt to put it on to get a referendum and on the ballot in 2020. And it was postponed until next year. The Children's Trust representatives are in the process of getting resolutions, and they have received resolutions from Sebastian, Fellsmere, and Vero Beach. They are seeking resolutions from Indian River Shores and Orchid. They have received a resolution from the hospital district, and they would like us to consider a resolution as well. I mentioned it to Dr. Moore earlier today, so, and I think you're probably all familiar with the Children's Trust and what the goal is, which is to double the millage rate from 1/8 to 1/4 of some small percentage. But the incremental dollars would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000, give or take, added to the trust, which in turn would be, based on a grant basis, would be distributed to organizations in the community that work with children. Homeless is one of the big topics, one of the bigger potential recipients of support from that organization. So you're going to start to hear more about that. We'll decide whether we want to have a resolution. I certainly would hope we would. But I think they're going to start to get the word out around the community probably later this year, ahead of the vote next November. And that's really all I have. Anybody, anything else? Hearing nothing?
Superintendent's closing.
Oh, he was shaking his head while I was talking.
Awesome. I have this turn.
All right, meeting adjourned at 8:57.